Jude is a British author who was born in London, where she lived for many years. Although she now lives in Winchester, she also spends extended time in Crete, where she co-owns a family house in a quite essentially Greek village. She has one added son. She began a writing career as a commercial short story writer and was published extensively and internationally for over 25 years. After completing an MA in creative writing, she switched to full-length novels and has now written four and is currently working on her fifth. Her novels are character-driven and in literary fiction genre. The main themes are the complexities of relationship, the secret and hidden truth that lie within lives, and the distances between us. She's also a teacher of English, drama, and creative writing. And on today's episode of our interview, it's my utmost pleasure and joy to have on the show today Jude Hayland. Welcome on the show, Jude.
Thank you very much for asking me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to have you on the show today. I'm excited.
Me too.
Yeah. So, Jude, could you tell us about your book, The Odyssey of Lily Page? How does this book come about? What inspired you to write The Odyssey of Lily Page?
Well, this is my fourth book, which was published just at the end of last year. Are you
Beautiful
going to see the
cover it
letters back
is.
to back?
Yeah.
I don't know. And all my novels are character driven. So this novel was actually inspired by two things. First of all, I was on a bus one day in London and I saw a woman waiting at a bus stop. And I just thought she needs to be in a novel. There was nothing particularly extraordinary about her, but somehow she just inspired me with an idea. The second idea was that I wanted to set, all my novels are set usually in the recent past, but I wanted specifically to set my novel in 1983. This was a year, 1983, when I was living in London. I can't believe it's 40 years ago now, but
Wow.
it was very much for me, well, not just me socially, I thought it was a pivotal year where things changed. It was lives changed, the kind of their material values, their aims, their ambitions. I think an awful lot changed around those early 1980s in the UK, in England. And I wanted that to be the background. And I wanted Lily, my protagonist, my main character, to be a woman who had reached halfway through her life, say she was 50, and had lived in an area of London called Islington, which is North London, all her life, and was suddenly aware of the changes that were going on. So that was kind of the starting point, really. Lily Page, my main character.
Wow, that's quite amazing to know, really. I love the sound of it. Pretty much sounds interesting to me. Now, I also see that you have another book titled Counting the Ways, for readers who haven't read that yet. And of course, without giving much information away, could we have a sneak of what we'd expect picking up Counting the Ways?
Counting the Ways is very different in that whereas the Odyssey of Lily Page is set entirely in London, Counting the Ways has lots of different settings. Again, it's set in the past, but it's over 2 years. It's set between 1985 and 1987. The settings are, it's London again, Oxford, if any of your viewers, listeners know Oxford, there's a section in Oxford, Somerset, which is a more kind of rural part of England, and also a Greek island. You mentioned at the beginning that I go to Crete a lot and we have a family house there. So I was inspired by that to have part of the setting on a Greek island. So there is a love story in it. I mean, love is always involved in my books because I'm not quite sure how you could write a book without love, but it's not the romantic. I don't write romances. It's more the realities of love and the complexities of love, which my novels explore. And Counting the Ways, which was my first novel, certainly does that. But as I say, partly set on a Greek island, partly set in London, partly set in Oxford, different settings.
That's great. And I was going to ask you, what genre is Counting the Ways? And also, what genre is Odyssey of Lily Page?
Well, I write in the kind of literary fiction genre, all my novels. They're character driven. Obviously,
Mm,
there is a plot, but the characters are what interests me and what drives the plot. I'm interested in, in people, in the things that we do with our lives, the complexities, the good points, the bad points. So they're all similar in that they're all completely separate stories
mm,
set at different times, but they are all, I suppose, literary fiction, character driven. They're novels where the language matters as well. I wouldn't
uh,
say they're fast paced novels. They're not rapid page turners because the story comes out of the characters and their decisions and the things that happen to them in life.
wow. It's quite amazing to know, really. I love the sound of it. So thank you so much for sharing. Now let's talk about criticism and feedbacks. As authors, we all have different ways of reacting to feedbacks and criticism of our works. Now I'm curious to know your opinion about criticism. How do you react to criticism? How do you handle criticism as a writer, especially the negative ones?
It is hard, although objectively, you know that not everybody is going to like what you write
Yeah,
because I don't like everything I read. And this is true of any art form. Pictures you might see, music you might hear. We don't obviously all like the same thing, otherwise, the world would be very dull. But
yeah,
nevertheless, this is your baby. You put your heart
absolutely.
and soul into this. So
Yeah.
you have to be realistic. You have to appreciate that not everybody is going to like what you write. I
Mm,
think for me, I don't expect everyone to write my stories because, as I say, we all like different kinds of literature. But what
yeah.
matters to me is that as long as people think the writing is good, um,
Mm,
as long as people appreciate the writing, I'm sure it's the same with art. You might like, you might look at a painting and think, well, I don't actually like it. It's beautifully painted, but it's not to my taste. And we would
oh,
all appreciate that. So I think that's what matters to me, that people think the writing's okay, even if they're not very keen on the story or the characters. But obviously, when you get good reviews, that makes your day. That makes your
yeah,
week. So
yeah,
the balance, you want people
absolutely.
to read your work, but then there is
Yeah.
that kind of trepidation about what they're going to say about it. Yeah.
Mm, wow, wow. I love your take on criticism. It sounds very educative and illustrative to me. So thank you so much for sharing. Now, Jude, would you like to tell us a bit about the making of one of your other books titled The Making of Mr. Jarvis?
The Legacy of Mr. Jarvis, this was my second novel. And this is a bit different in the sense it has a dual timeline. Part of the novel is set in the late 1960s and part in 2008.
Wow.
It's also different in that it's written in the first person, whereas my other
Oh,
novels written in the third
Ted.
person.
Mm,
So this is from the viewpoint not of Mr. Jarvis, but of a character called Mary Foster.
mm,
And the adult Mary is the 2008 part, and she is thinking after the death of her mother about her childhood and about crucial events in her childhood. So
mm.
she's looking back and she's reliving her childhood and adolescence and a particular event which happened there. So it's interspersed with this dual timeline of both the adult Mary and the child and teenager Mary. So it is very different in that sense. It
Wow.
has a large part of it is set on the south coast of England,
Mm,
around Brighton, if anyone knows that area, um, and and just somewhere else in southern England. But as I say, that's what makes it different, a dual timeline. It's certainly about secrets and lies which lie
mm.
within families, the
Yeah.
secrecy that can go from generation to generation until anybody is willing to confront the truth of what
Mm.
actually might have occurred. So
Wow.
that's the legacy. It's a little bit different than the other
Wow.
novels.
I particularly love the theme that it expands on secret within families. Yeah, yeah, and
Yes.
we have got a lot of family secrets that nobody want to talk about, or some
Exactly.
father might want to hide from their children, mother want to hide from their daughters, etc. Yeah, so that
Yeah.
sounds very amazing and like a great team that most people can relate to. So
Yes.
yeah,
Hopefully.
it's quite commendable.
Yes. Good. Yeah. It's secrecies. I think all of us are aware of especially the extended family, or even
Absolutely.
the nuclear family. There are things that just nobody talks about. We just go on from day to day. And
Hmm.
that's certainly an idea that I took for the legacy of
Yeah,
Mr. Jarvis. And the adult Mary has suddenly decided she wants to find out
absolutely.
what has been hidden for so many years.
That's great to know. Now, Jude, I've always been fascinated about how authors, especially novelists like yourself, craft long sentences and brings works together in a way that it eventually makes a great novel. These oftentimes leave me thinking about how exactly they got their ideas and inspiration. Now, as far as writing is concerned, I too would love to ask you, how do you get your inspiration and ideas? Where do they come from?
Ideas come randomly from all over the place. Because my novels are character driven, it is always people, memories as well. Sometimes there's something that maybe you heard a story about years ago,
Hmm.
or something that happened to somebody that often influences me. And usually you don't take the whole idea, but maybe a little bit of something, a little bit of a memory about
Yeah,
somebody, and then put that with something else, and then your imagination. I don't write about my own life. I would find that very dull and boring. But you might write about, I take ideas from snatches of conversation, snatches of memory from the past, or
absolutely.
that you might hear, or sitting in a cafe. I'm a great one for sitting in cafes and just people watching. And you see family, you see a group of people, and that kind of sparks an idea. And sometimes that idea, you don't start writing about it straight away, but you might store it up for future use. So the ideas never stop coming. I'm never short of ideas. It's just having
Wow.
the time to develop them into a novel
Wow.
that takes the time and the patience.
Wow, that's quite an amazing way to get ideas and inspiration. That's quite lovely to know. So thank you for sharing. That's quite wholesome to know. Now, Jude, apart from the books we've mentioned so far, do you have any other works you've authored or maybe currently working on?
Yes, we didn't mention Miller Street, which was my last novel. That was the one
Oh,
that came out 3 years ago now. Miller Street
wow.
SW22. Again, that's very much a London novel. My last two have been very much London novels. And the picture was of a typical London
I can see.
street of Victorian houses.
Yeah.
Um, but now I'm working on my fifth novel,
Wow.
which actually is very different in the sense that this is set during the Second World War. No, I've never written historic novel. I've never gone that far back. And this novel, I've never written about an era when I wasn't alive, and I wasn't
Mm.
alive then. So this is very different, and it's involving a great deal of research, which I'm absolutely loving. I didn't realize how little I knew about an event which was, okay, 20th century, but not that long ago.
Mm.
So I'm enjoying the research. I have started writing it, but it's set in London again, but
Wow.
in the Second World War. So that's going to be my fifth novel, and I'm just in the early stages of writing. And I am a slow writer. I don't write fast, and I rewrite and edit and re-edit constantly. But that's my current project is my Second World War novel.
Wow. That's quite amazing to know. And I hope that goes on successfully. Hopefully, when that is help, we'd love to have you back on the show to talk about it. That would be great.
Great, that sounds good.
Yeah. Now, could you tell us what publishing is like for a published author like yourself? Are there any challenges you've encountered ever since you got published?
I think the challenges are marketing. I think getting your name out there, making sure that people know you exist. So many novels are published by so many publishers all the time.
Every day.
And it is a challenge to be noticed and to
Yeah.
get your to you don't want everybody to notice you in the sense that you've obviously got a target audience. You identify the kind of people who are going to enjoy your novels, hopefully. As we were saying earlier, not everybody is going to have an appetite for the sort of novels that I write, but you want to try and get your target audience and identify them and reach out to them, which is why I do things like this is great. And at least today, with access to social media, with podcasts, it's a little bit easier. I go around to groups and I give lots of talks and try to speak, as well as using social media, of course, on Facebook and Instagram. They're my main two sources. But I would say that's the challenge for any author, making sure you're noticed or your work is noticed, not you personally. And as I say, I get invited to talk to groups, societies, clubs, that kind of thing. Mostly in person, but occasionally online too. So getting your work out there and maintaining that contact with an audience and your target readers.
Wow.
That's probably the basic challenge.
It's quite amazing to know. And I understand that this is one of the major issues that most authors face and experience as far as writing is concerned. Putting our words together is quite the easiest part of the journey, though we all acknowledge the fact that it's a bit hard. But the real work lies in marketing. That's where which business is, that's where the success of a story is. That's where, we just have to do something so people can know that there's a book out there, there's something over there for them to check up. Yeah, so I can relate to that big time.
And I think naturally writers are quite private people. Sitting in our studies, typing away with our cups of coffee and tea and whatever is what we love doing. Actually coming out from behind our screens
absolutely
and our covers and projecting yourself, it's really difficult. It's quite painful.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Now, Jude, is there anything that you would love to share with the viewers about your books that we did not mention in this interview, and you'd love the viewers to know?
Well, I think obviously I have a website and I blog from my website all about writing. And I would invite people to visit my website, to go there and to see if my books are the kind of ones they would enjoy reading. As we said, I know not everybody is going to like reading, but hopefully my books are anybody who's interested in British life, particularly London, the last two novels. In the last two novels set in the last novel set in the 1980s, the novel before, Miller Street, it's actually set in 2005, 2006. Three of my novels are set before mobile phones were invented.
Wow.
Which for me is quite notable and useful. Absolutely. Because it cut out communication. You had to write letters or make phone calls. And if you're kind of interested in eras before we were all communicating with social media, or they're all written and set, they're all set in eras before social media existed. So if you're interested in earlier eras, in how people behaved, how people communicated, and you enjoy character-driven novels, perhaps you might like to have a look at my novels and see if they're for you.
Yeah, that's very amazing. I like the fact that you mentioned it's character-driven, because I am a huge fan of characterization when it comes to novels. I love characterization when it comes to story, because I come to think of it that, characters to me, actually, because we have different people's opinion when it comes to one of the major things that drives you most when it comes to reading a book. But with me, I prefer very great, astounding, compelling characterization that would cause me to, paint image in my head as I read along, paint image of this particular character. And if it's a series novel, look forward to seeing how the story is continued and how these characters are played in the coming series stuff. So I'm a huge fan of characterization. I like the fact that your book is a character-driven novel. So yeah, that sounds very intriguing to me, really.
Thank you. Good. Yeah. Yes, it's all about what happens to the people. It really is, and how events affect them. But as I say, it's literary fiction, it's general fiction, it's not murder, it's It's not spy. It's none of those company. It's not fantasy.
Yeah.
I write what I like reading, which I think is
Wow.
probably true of most writers.
That's
Yeah.
awesome to know. That's awesome to know. Thank you for sharing. Now, Jude, as a published author, what sort of advice do you have for other writers who are still struggling with publishing a book? What would you advise people in this category? Also, I would like you to read some section of your book in case you have, it can be a favorite part, might be some few paragraph or a
Okay.
particular line that you particularly admire, and just so people can say you might want to read a session
Okay.
of your book to the
Well, I think I
audience.
should probably my most recent one, The Odyssey of
Otis
Lily.
Lily, yeah.
So, shall I read that now, or do you want me to talk first about getting published? Or
Yeah, you can read that now, then talk about getting the advice for writers.
well, this is from the very first chapter. Just tell me if I'm reading too much. 8 o'clock tonight. Yeah, I just read a couple of paragraphs.
All right.
The first time she saw Stella Fox seemed insignificant. The last was an incident hitched to memory.
Mm.
But the first, Clerkenwell Road, on a Wednesday afternoon, early in the new year of 1983, the light beginning to fade after a day of cold, brittle sun. She was leaning languidly against the bus stop, as if appropriating it to serve only her needs, assuming the object for her purpose. Lily Page should have known then. Later, she was to remember the civility of that bus stop and the knives of ice in the cruel January air that threatened snow. But at the time, she saw only the girl, the young woman clad defiantly in an enormous amount of fur, sable or perhaps squirrel, staring indifferently down the road, detached, remote. Lily envied her, admired her air of self-possession, noted the perfection of her pale, flawless face, and was reminded of her late mother's fur coat, the smell of cedar and dust and stale perfume when she opened the door of that large wardrobe on the top landing of the house. And then the bus arrived.
Wow.
That's the first couple of paragraphs of my
That's
latest book.
amazing. I particularly love your word building with this, actually. I know it's a short one you've read, but then I particularly love your word building and your tone. Your tone also sounds amazing. Looks like I'm listening to an audiobook narrator. Anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we can go ahead with the advice for writers.
Well, keep going for a start. I mean, I think we live in the one era where there are all sorts of ways and methods of getting published.
Yeah.
Years ago, there was only the route to try to get an agent, spend years trying to get an agent, then years trying to get a publishing deal. And of course, that route is still out there, but it's
Yeah.
harder and harder. Obviously, people can just publish themselves online if you've got the right skills. I don't have the skills. I mean,
Yeah.
people are technically you could do what you like. You can get a book up in one afternoon, I believe, but that
Yeah.
eludes me. And also, I wanted tangible books. My books are available actually as paperbacks, but also as ebooks. So they are downloadable as ebooks. But so as I say, there's always that route people can take themselves if they can deal with the technicalities. They can publish just with Amazon and this kind of
Mm.
thing. But I didn't. I approached a publisher, a small publisher called Troubadour, and sent my manuscript to them. And they accepted it. And so I published with them.
Wow.
So, but as I say, there really isn't one route anymore. There are all sorts of ways, and it's a case of what suits you. Different genres suit different methods, if you like. I mean, I take books around to festivals and book fairs and events, and I sell my books one to one. I mean, my books are also available from Amazon
Yeah.
and direct my publisher and from all publishers, all high street bookshops. They're available
Wow.
everywhere. So it really depends what your aim is, whether you want a decent published book to hold in your hand, a tangible book, or whether you just want something that people can download And if you're good and technical, then you can just do it yourself.
Yeah.
I didn't take that route. As I say, my publisher is called Troubadour, which my books sell through, but they do also sell through Amazon, through Barnes and Noble, through all the different online platforms.
Wow.
I'll think of all the names, as ebooks as well. I haven't yet done an audio book. That is again another route that people can take.
Yeah.
So there are lots of different routes. I think it's a case of people deciding what works for them and what's
Yeah.
right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and I'm hopeful that viewers, including myself, will love to utilize your advice. Now, Jude, in case we have some interested viewers who are currently watching this interview, I would like to get a copy of any of your books. On what platform are they available on for purchase?
Well, a good way is to either just put the title of any of my books or my name into Amazon. There is only one Jude Hayland. There's a
Hayland.
Highland, but not a Hayland. And
Oh,
if you just put any of the names of my books into Amazon, it'll come up. On the other hand, if you go to my website, which is www.judehayland.co.uk, there's information about all my books, and there's a button to press where you can
oh,
click straight through to my publishers to buy them, or it will give you all the information. Or people can also email me directly from the website if they need more information. I'm always happy to talk to people. If it's in the UK, I can send them a book, but if they want to buy from Amazon, that will give them all the information and the Amazon code and the ISBN number.
wow.
All that information is on my website. But to say, if they just Google the name of my novels into into Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Kobo or wherever else they get
Yeah.
their novels from, they will find them. But my website, signing up to my newsletter and to my blogs is another means of keeping up to date with me.
Wow, that's quite amazing to know. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Jude Hayland's books directly on Amazon, on the website, and on other platforms as well. So thank you so much, Jude, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. It's awesome having this conversation with you.
It's great. Thank you so much. It's brightened up a very cold winter stay for me. Thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure as well.